as fantasy football gets into full swing and those fantasy drafts are coming up, I'm going to tell you which Buffalo Bills you need to have on your team in 2019 to have a successful fantasy season. Welcome to Believers Talk. My name is Joe, and welcome to a fantasy football edition of Believers Talk. Before we do that, however, I want to remind everyone, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, guys. Hit that subscribe button, like this video, leave a comment, tell me what Bills you think should be on your NFL fantasy team for 2019. Guys, I want to remind everyone, if you haven't already been made aware, Believers Talk and BewareTheStampede.com recently started a partnership. So if you haven't already been to BewareTheStampede.com, go to BewareTheStampede.com for all of your Buffalo Bills news. And in starting that partnership, what a better way to start off that partnership with a giveaway. So we are giving away an Andre Reed signed mini helmet, which is right here, guys. So from now till August 6th, if you haven't already subscribed to Believers Talk, hit that subscribe button. If you haven't already sent your email address to Beware the Stampede to be on his mailing list for all the breaking Buffalo Bills news, do that as well. Follow us on Twitter. You can retweet every single day the tweets that we put out, and that will count as an entry. Just go to his website, and there's a way to enter there. So click on the link, and then you can enter for your chance to win this Andre Reed mini helmet. But again, guys, we want to talk about fantasy football. I know a lot of you out there love fantasy football, love playing fantasy football. I am not a fantasy footballer. I actually haven't played fantasy football in 3 years. However, I can tell you that when I did play fantasy football, you're talking about a guy who would have somewhere between 20 and 25 fantasy football teams every year. It was a lot of fun, crazy, a little hectic when you have that many teams, but you always knew what was going on. So I want to talk to you guys a little about the Buffalo Bills, which guys you might want on your fantasy teams and which guys you might want to stay away from. So first, obviously, we're going to talk about that quarterback position, right? We're going to talk about Josh Allen. Now, I have seen Josh Allen as high as 15 in fantasy football projections. I've seen it as low as 25. And that's really a good range when you're talking about Josh Allen. I think there are a lot of people out there who are a little skeptical about what Josh Allen can deliver, and for a good reason. But you do have to remember the Buffalo Bills did improve their offensive line. Got a lot of good blocking tight ends. So hopefully what that means is Josh Allen is going to have a little bit more time in the pocket. You also do have to take into consideration his rushing ability, right? We saw it last year on full display. Now, I have been on record as saying that I do not want him to rush as much this year as he did last year, and I still hold that to be true. But you're talking about a guy who at the goal line might be able to get you into the end zone, get you those 6 points for that touchdown. And that's a big thing compared to someone maybe like a Tom Brady or something like that, who's not really going to run out of the pocket all too much, okay? So I look at Josh Allen and I say, like I said, that 15-25 range, pretty good. I personally have him ranked as my 17th best fantasy football quarterback, maybe late second, or QB2, early QB3. You normally only keep 2 quarterbacks. I definitely think that he's worth taking a chance on. I think the ceiling for Josh Allen's pretty big, especially if you look at those new wide receivers, right? You talk about Brown, who can just blow the roof off with his downfield ability. You talk about Beasley, who's always going to get open on third downs. And you talk about Zay Jones, who everyone's talking about Zay Jones' third year coming into his own, might be worth keeping as well, or drafting as well in fantasy football. We'll get to that name in a minute. So I have Josh Allen ranked as my 17th quarterback in fantasy football. So that's going to be a late QB2, and there's nothing wrong with that. Someone want to take a chance on. Now remember, if you are picking up a Buffalo Bills player, we do have bye week 6. So I know, especially with the QB position, you don't want to get a QB with the same bye week. Now I'm not exactly sure who all has the same bye week. I know Mitchell Trubisky does of the Bears, but I can't think of them all off the top of my head. But just to keep in mind, if you are looking to draft Buffalo Bills players, we have draft or by week 6. So you want to remember that. You go down to the running back position then, and of course we look at LeSean McCoy. Now everyone's going to talk about how last year was the worst year for LeSean McCoy. Now at the highest I've seen LeSean McCoy on draft boards is 24th best running back. The lowest I've seen him is the 51st, and I think to be 51st is a little ridiculous. I think he definitely has to be in the top 32. He is still the starting running back back for our Buffalo Bills at this time. So you have to put him at least in the top 32, right? He's as good as all the starters in the NFL, if not better than a few of them. I actually have McCoy as a low running back 2, high running back 3 for your team. Obviously, he does not have the draft potential that he's had in years past, but that could also be a good thing. That could be to our benefit with a better offensive line. And he might just pull off a pretty good season if he can find those holes like he was able to do 2, 3, 4 years ago. Remember, he's only 2 years removed from a 1,000+ yard season. Plus, we know he can catch the ball out of the backfield. We know he's good there. Now, we do have to be worried for the past 2 seasons. Really hasn't found the end zone all that much. 2 years ago, when he rushed for over 1,000 yards still, took him to about week 5 or 6 to get in the end zone that first time. So, obviously in fantasy football, you want touchdowns. So, the rankings might not be indicative of how good of a running back he is, more how much he is going to find the end zone. And for that, you might want to look at even Frank Gore as a possible running back 4 on your team. Just as a late sleeper, someone you know who's going to get those goal line touches, get into the end zone. But you're never sure it's going to be feast or famine, whether he gets a touchdown or 2 a game, or if he doesn't see the ball all that much because the Buffalo Bills offense is struggling to get down the field. We hope that doesn't happen too much, but it still might. But you look at LeSean McCoy, I have him ranked as the 22nd best running back. So like I said, maybe a running back 2, maybe a high running back 3 type level here. I still think he's one of the best 32 in the game. And like I say, he's just a season removed from a 1,000+ yard season. And you also have to consider the offensive line we had last year was ranked 27th in the league. This year, much improved. We hopefully we'll see much improvement from LeSean McCoy. Now the thing is, if you don't want to get handcuffed, right? So if you don't see improvement from LeSean McCoy, who's going to get a lot of touches? I think it's going to be rookie Devin Singletary. So if you pick up LeSean McCoy, my advice would be pick up Devin Singletary late if you can. Again, not highly drafted right now. I think he's in the 50s as far as running back, current running back grade. So I would pick up Devin Singletary. I think if LeSean McCoy struggles, if we do decide to release LeSean McCoy, Devin Singletary is going to see a lot more touches, and I think he is going to be the main feature back on first and second down. Like I said, you still want to consider Frank Gore on third downs, goal line situations. I think he is still going to be a monster getting you 4 or 5 yards to carry, but that's not going to be worth the running back 1, running back 2. Again, 2 guys, both Singletary and Frank Gore. If you want to consider picking them up late, you can do that. However, I think LeSean McCoy is still going to be the featured back. Like I said, I have him as the 22nd best running back on the board. That has you picking him up as your RB2 late, or maybe an early RB3. If you come as your third running back, I think that's really a good value for you. So now we move to the running back position. The wide receiver position. And at the wide receiver position, you look at John Brown, you look at Zay Jones, you look at Robert Foster, and you look at Cole Beasley. Those are the 4 guys that, to me, have any value at fantasy whatsoever. I think if you look at John Brown, I think he might even have the best value. We all know how much Josh Allen loves to sling the ball. That's going to give you a lot of chances to get long touchdowns with Brown. Right now, again, with that, you might see some games where you miss sometimes, right? He might not be the number 1 targeted guy. In fact, if you're looking at the guy who gets the most targets on this team, I would not be surprised if that's Zay Jones, right? Everyone's talking about how Zay Jones has beefed himself up a little bit during the offseason. So far, this offseason has had no trouble, and that's always a good sign to show signs of maturity. And we know that 3rd year is very crucial for a slot type receiver, which is what Zay Jones is. Now, the good news from a team aspect is that we have 4 wide receivers who are capable of getting, running good routes, getting the ball thrown to them, getting open. The bad news from fantasy level is you never know who is going to be that guy from week to week. We have that problem with the Saints. If you're a fantasy football fan, most years, especially years prior, you looked at the Saints and you were like, well, one week, Colston would go off, and the next week would be Thomas, and the next week it'd be somebody else, and the next week it'd be someone else, and you just never knew who to start, right? Now, obviously, we're not going to pass the ball as much as the Saints did with Drew Brees, or do with Drew Brees. So that's something else you have to take into consideration. But you do have 4 guys who are potential sleepers when it comes to fantasy football. If you're looking for a guy to take a chance on, again, John Brown might be worth taking a chance on. Zay Jones, like I said, Zay Jones, I believe, is going to get the most targets this season. And for that reason, I think Zay Jones might be the best Buffalo Bills wide receiver from a fantasy standpoint. And if you're you're looking at Zay Jones, I personally do not see from a fantasy standpoint picking up any of these wide receivers for anything more than a flex position. I don't see them as a wide receiver 1, definitely. If you pick them up late as wide receiver 2, I wouldn't hate that. But again, I'm looking at wide receiver 3, possibly even wide receiver 4 for all 4 of these guys. I know a lot of people like Robert Foster. I like Robert Foster. Definitely came on strong towards the end of last year. But you do have to remember, this guy spent time on and off the field with the Buffalo Bills, on and off the team with the Buffalo Bills. So he showed a lot of explosiveness towards the end of last season, but can that continue for a full season? Can he show that consistency? And how is he going to respond, knowing that, hey, he won't get the ball every play, maybe, or every game? Maybe he likes that. Maybe he'll like the fact that he might be able to get open a little bit more. Maybe he won't. But I have 4 of these guys. I would be surprised if all 4 of these guys don't at some point get drafted in your fantasy league, but I would not have a single one of them as your 1 or 2. Again, John Brown, Zay Jones, definitely good for that flex position. Maybe you could sneak Zay Jones as a wide receiver 2, but I wouldn't count on that. And then you look at Cole Beasley. Cole Beasley is just going to be consistent, right? And that's what we want to see out of a guy like Cole Beasley, is that consistency, that third down guy. You know he's going to get open. Probably not going to see a lot of touches in the end zone or see a lot of targets in the red zone just due to his size. But you never know. Like Dak Prescott said, he's the guy that's always finding ways to get open. So Cole Beasley, I would pick up maybe later, much later in the draft, maybe talking about rounds 13, 14, depending on how deep your draft is. And then Robert Foster might be the one guy that you might want to take a waiver on and say maybe he's not worth drafting, but he might be a free agent then, or someone you could pick up later in the season if need be. So those are the 4 wide receivers. I look at the tight end position, and there's no one there that I think is worth drafting in your fantasy draft, right? You look at Tyler Kroft, you might say, hey, Tyler Kroft would have been worth drafting, and I don't disagree with that. But now with that foot injury, we're not even sure how long he's going to be out. So now you look at Lee Smith, you look at Dawson Knox, maybe. But these are all guys that you'll be able to pick up after the draft is over. Not too many people are going to be looking at these guys as potential tight end 1 or 2 targets. If you want to take a chance on a Dawson Knox, maybe as the last pick in your draft before you get your kicker, then maybe that's something you want to consider. But I think all of the tight ends are going to be available when it comes to the end of the draft. I think you just pick them up off waivers. Not that big of a deal. So now you go on to the defense/special teams. Again, we all know we had the 2nd-ranked defense on the field last year, but as far as fantasy football goes, not putting up the best numbers, okay? Just because we weren't getting the turnovers we were getting 2 years ago, and we also weren't getting in the end zone like we were 2 years ago off those turnovers. And also special teams has something to do with that too, right? Now, I do see a big turnaround this year. I think we're going to actually do really well in our turnover differential this season. I think we can get a lot more sacks this season. That's another thing we didn't get a lot of last year. I think we only had 16 sacks last season. I think we're going to improve that number with Ed Oliver now in the middle, taking up some more space. Star Lotulelei still taking on those double teams. Jerry Hughes, Shaq Lawson, Trent Murphy on the outside. I think they're going to have a field day and get to the quarterback a lot more than they did last year. So another thing is I see our special teams actually doing much better. You talk about us picking up Sonoris Perry. You talk about us picking up Andre Roberts from the Jets. 2 guys who are special team specialists. I think they might go off and have a field day, and they might be able to return some kicks for touchdowns, and that, of course, will help you when it comes to the defensive/special teams position. So I would actually have the Buffalo Bills defense/special teams in the top 5. So if you're just picking up the unit defense/special teams for your team, I would say go after Buffalo early. As far as defenses go, obviously you can pick up your defense a little later, but I would say they're going to be a top 5 fantasy defense. And then you look at your kicker position, you look at Steven Hauschka. Again, if you watched my special teams video, you know Steven Hauschka is perfect from inside 40 yards when it comes to field goals. Only missed 1 extra point last year, was perfect for extra points 2 years ago. Now, again, we do have to see if that injury is going to be lingering or not. However, when you talk about extra points, you get deducted points on your fantasy team for missing extra points. You want guys who's going to be consistent. You want a Justin Tucker. You want a Steven Stephen Hauschka. You want guys like that who you know are going to make their extra points. Now, when it comes to kicks inside 30 or 40 yards, you also might get deducted points for that, so you want consistency there as well. So you look at Stephen Hauschka, you look at a guy who made every kick with inside 40 yards last year. He made all but one extra point last season, and he made all of his extra points the year before, so you know you have consistency there. This guy is a kicker that's worth picking up early as far as kickers go. Again, I normally wait till the last round to pick up my kicker, so Stephen Hauschka might be gone by then. You might have that one or two guys who pick up their kicker in the second to last round or third to last round. They might pick up Stephen Hauschka because I do think Stephen Hauschka is a top 3 kicker in fantasy football this season. I think our offense is much improved, which means we're going to get a lot more points, which also means Stephen Hauschka is going to get a lot more extra points, get a lot more field goal attempts. I think Stephen Hauschka is a top 3 kicker in fantasy football. I think our defense is a top 5, possible top 3 defense in fantasy football. Other than that, you've heard my rankings. Josh Allen, I have the 17th best quarterback in the league. McCoy, I think I said 22nd, 24th, somewhere in that range. Late QB2, late running back 2, early RB3, depending where you want to rank them. And then as far as the wide receivers go, like I said, I wouldn't project any of our wide receivers to be a wide receiver 1 or 2. Maybe at the flex position, I think Zay Jones is going to be the best of the four for fantasy football. I think he's going to get the most targets, get the most receptions. Maybe not get as many touchdowns as, let's say, a John Brown, so that might be an advantage to John Brown. Those definitely 2 guys I'd pick up first. But then you look at Cole Beasley, definitely a guy who's going to have that consistency about him, right? That he's had in Dallas for all those years. And then you look at Robert Foster, might be a guy you can pick up off waivers at the end of your fantasy draft, but definitely a guy who we all know can move downfield and get those big completions. So let me know what you think in the comment section below of that fantasy breakdown. Again, those are the guys that I see. If you want any Buffalo Bills on your team, those are the only guys I see with any value right now. Again, Buffalo, it's hard to get fantasy value just because of the type of team we are. That defense is going to give you a lot of value. That special teams, the kicker, going to give you a lot of value. As far as offense, sometimes we run kind of a vanilla offense, as we all know, and that doesn't help when it comes to fantasy football points. But that is my fantasy football breakdown. Let me know what you think. Again, guys, if you haven't already hit that subscribe button, now's a perfect time to do it. Hit that subscribe button as Believers Talk and BewareTheStampede.com work together. We have that sweepstakes going on, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button for your chance to win an Andre Reed signed mini helmet. Go to BewareTheStampede.com, sign up for their mailing list. That's another entry. And then follow us on Twitter. That's another entry. And then we retweet every day for your chance to win that Andre Reed mini helmet. So again, thank you for joining me. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think about the fantasy football. Let me know if you have any builds on your fantasy football team. I'll talk to y'all soon. Until I do, go Bills.